Before we begin, a quick but important note. This episode contains discussions of suicide, which may be distressing for some listeners. Please be aware of your own well-being. If you or someone you know is struggling, please know that help is available. Reach out to friends, family, or professionals. You are not alone. In the United States, you can call or text the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988 for free, confidential support 24/7. Please take care while listening. Listener discretion is advised. Remember, it's okay to pause or stop if you need to.
Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. If you haven't already done so, please make sure the volume of this podcast is set perfectly to your listening enjoyment. Please take your seat, whether that's on the treadmill, car, sofa, or bed, and buckle in for the last trip. My name is Jamie Beebe, and I'll be your tour guide, recreating someone's last days in paradise. On behalf of myself and everyone behind the scenes, please enjoy the Last Trip podcast. And because nobody likes a long flight to get to where they want to be, let's prepare for takeoff. She was known as Shark Girl, a fearless underwater photographer who swam with predators most of us only dare to watch on TV. At 48, Valerie de la Valdene had it all. A career that earned her a spot in the Women Divers Hall of Fame, features on Shark Week, a culinary education under a world-renowned chef, and the kind of wealth that came with a prestigious family name. But in June 2014, Valerie was found dead in the Galapagos Islands, a single gunshot wound to the left temple. Authorities called it a suicide, but the scene told a different story. When you follow the trail of strange details and unanswered questions, it begins to look a lot less like self-destruction and a lot more like murder. Let's take a moment to step away from the shadows of mystery and crime and step into the surreal beauty of the place where it all happened. Santa Cruz Island, the beating heart of the Galapagos Islands. If you've seen images of the Galapagos, sea lions lounging on sun-bleached rocks, giant tortoises trundling through ancient lava fields, blue-footed boobies performing their comical mating dance, chances are you've glimpsed Santa Cruz. The island, just shy of 380 square miles, is the most populated in the Galapagos, and home to Puerto Ayora, the largest town on the islands. It's a buzzing little port town perched on the southern coast. Boats bob in the harbor, sea lions bark at the pier, and tourists in sun hats line up for water taxis under the hot sun. But don't be fooled by the beach town vibe. Santa Cruz is a place layered in history, evolution, and more than a few secrets. Let's rewind the clock. Santa Cruz was once known by a different name, Indefatigable Island, named after a British naval ship. Before that, it was a haven for pirates and whalers, who used its freshwater springs and sheltered coves as a rest stop in the vast Pacific. And before them, the island existed in silence for millennia, shaped by volcanic fire and ocean wind. Then came science, and with it, a man named Charles Darwin. In 1835, Darwin stepped foot in the Galapagos, not on Santa Cruz, but nearby. Still, the island today is considered the intellectual and scientific hub of the islands, thanks in part to the Charles Darwin Research Station. Founded in 1964, the station sits just east of Puerto Ayora, tucked behind cactus-studded paths and lava rock trails. Inside, you'll find scientists, conservationists, and volunteers working to protect the fragile ecosystem of the Galapagos. They've done groundbreaking work in breeding programs, most famously for the giant tortoise. If you ever visited before 2012, you might have met Lonesome George, the last known Pinta Island tortoise. He became a symbol of extinction, resilience, and the heartbreaking consequence of human impact. Though George is gone, his legacy lingers. Visitors can now see his preserved body on display, both as a tribute and a warning. But Santa Cruz is no museum. It's very much alive. The island rises from the sea like something out of a dream. Its coasts are rimmed with black volcanic rock, secret lagoons, and stretches of white sand so bright they almost seem to glow. You might spot marine iguanas sprawled like ancient dragons, warming themselves on lava stones, or snorkel alongside reef sharks, sea turtles, and playful sea lions. The waters here are startlingly clear, and the biodiversity, unmatched. There's nowhere else quite like it. Tourists come for the adventure, diving, kayaking, hiking volcanic craters. But they also come for something deeper, a chance to step back in time, to see nature before it was tamed. Now, getting here isn't all that difficult. You'll fly into Baltra Island, which was once a U.S. military base during World War II. From there, it's a short ferry ride across the Iribaca Channel to Santa Cruz. Most travelers then head south to Puerto Ayora, which is the jumping-off point for most Galapagos excursions. But for people like Valerie de la Valdene, this place wasn't just a destination. It was a calling. Valerie was no ordinary tourist. She wasn't coming for the Instagram photos or the souvenir shops. She came for the sharks. The Galapagos Islands are one of the best places in the world to photograph large shark species. Hammerheads, silky sharks, blacktips, and even the elusive whale shark. The surrounding waters are a playground for ocean photographers. Volcanic formations drop off into the deep blue nothingness. Schools of fish swirl like tornadoes. And if you're lucky, you'll find yourself completely surrounded by hammerheads. Hundreds, sometimes thousands, gliding silently through the current. And that's why Valerie went to the Galapagos, because in these waters she could be free, unafraid, alive in a way that made everything on land seem distant, small, almost irrelevant. Valerie was an experienced diver and a gifted photographer. But more than that, she was an ocean soul. Someone drawn to the mystery, to the danger, and the serenity of the deep. In the water, she found clarity, perspective, purpose. She spent her days gliding alongside rays and reef sharks, chasing the light as it filtered through the blue waters. She taught school children how to cook. She took photos that ended up in scientific publications and conservation campaigns. She explored, she documented, she lived. But even paradise has its shadows. There are whispers here, quiet stories passed between locals and guides when the tourists aren't listening. Like the tale of El Diablo de la Isla, the devil of the island. A spirit said to haunt the highlands where the fog clings to the trees like ghostly fingers. Some say they've seen strange lights flickering through the forest. Others have reported hearing footsteps behind them on empty trails. Then there's the La Llorona-like figure of La Mujer del Mar, the woman of the sea. According to legend, she appears to fishermen just before a storm, weeping on the shoreline, warning them to stay ashore. Those who ignore her are said to vanish into the waves. And superstitions aside, the Galapagos is not a place to be taken lightly. It's fiercely protected. Tourists must follow strict regulations, no touching wildlife, no straying from marked trails, and no removing even a pebble from the islands. There's even a 9 p.m. curfew in many parts of Puerto Ayora. You won't find all-night bars or party culture here, and that's intentional. The Galapagos isn't meant to be conquered. It's meant to be respected. Yet, there are cracks beneath the surface. Like any place that attracts wealth and exclusivity, the Galapagos has its quiet battles between conservation and development, locals and expats, scientists and smugglers. Beneath the postcard-perfect image is a complex place, a place where beauty and danger coexist. A place where a woman like Valerie de la Valdene could come seeking inspiration, but never make it out alive. Now, to truly understand the depth of this story and the woman at the center of it, we have to go back, before the photographs, before the headlines, before the mystery. There was just Valerie, a fearless explorer, a passionate conservationist, a woman who belonged to the sea. So, who was Valerie de la Valdene? Let's take a moment to step into her world.
Think you know true crime? think again. We're diving into the bizarre and the cases that leave you questioning everything.
I'm Amber.
And I'm Gina. We're the hosts of Weird True Crime, a podcast that explores the strangest, most mind-boggling cases out there.
From the dark history behind everyday things you think you know, to cases so wild they sound like fiction, we dig into it all.
Behind every headline, every missing persons poster, and every unsolved case, there are families who are still searching for answers and loved ones who refuse to be forgotten.
We speak with families of the missing and murdered, helping them tell their stories, spread awareness, and keep hope alive.
Because too often, these cases don't get the attention they deserve.
Whether you're drawn to the unbelievable, the unsolved, or the heartbreaking, we're here to tell these stories with the care and respect they deserve.
Listen to Weird True Crime wherever you get your podcasts.
Because crime is weird.
And the truth is stranger than fiction.
Valerie de la Valdene was never destined for an ordinary life. Born on March 5th, 1966, in the elite circles of Palm Beach, Florida, she grew up in a world of privilege. But she was never one to simply enjoy the view from the top. The daughter of celebrated Tallahassee-based author and naturalist Guy de la Valdene and his wife Teresa, Valerie had both wilderness and wealth in her blood. Her godparents were none other than Jimmy and Janie Buffett. Yes, that Jimmy Buffett. And by the time she was old enough to speak, she was already drawn to the sea. She attended Palm Beach Day School and went on to earn a criminology degree at Tulane University. But it wasn't law or office life that would call to her. It was the thrill of exploration, the mystery of the ocean, and the pull of adventure. She would become many things in her 48 years: a fierce conservationist, an award-winning underwater photographer, a documentary filmmaker, a culinary instructor, and a wildly passionate advocate for sharks. Oh, and she also happened to be an heiress. Through her mother's lineage, Valerie was a direct descendant of Henry Phipps, the steel tycoon and financial advisor to Andrew Carnegie. Now, the Phipps fortune, managed through Bessemer Trust, had billions under management, with Forbes reporting it supports over 100 descendants. Valerie had a trust fund that allowed her to support herself with a monthly income of about $7,000 to $8,000. But what made Valerie remarkable wasn't the money. It was what she chose to do with it. Alongside her ex-husband, fellow underwater photographer Douglas Seifert, Valerie spent years traveling the globe documenting sea life. They filmed everything from whale migrations to the delicate flutter of seahorses. But it was sharks that truly captured her heart. She was inducted into the Women Divers Hall of Fame in 2007. And would go on to be featured on Shark Week and numerous major news programs, from CNN and Jane Pauley to Montel Williams and Geraldo Rivera. She even co-created a children's film for Discovery Channel and co-hosted an educational internet program with Wild Classroom that reached over 100 million students worldwide. Valerie had courage, not bravado. She didn't just film sharks, she swam with them. One of her most famous encounters took place in the northern Galapagos off Darwin Island. She had been diving with a group when she drifted too far and found herself completely alone in open water. As the currents swept her away from the others, a swarm of sharks closed in. Curious and bold, they nudged her camera, bumped her body, and circled with intention. At one point, they broke her rib, but she never stopped filming. Her screams, captured on video, were raw and unfiltered, a primal response to a real brush with death. The footage was later used in a Discovery Channel special titled Primal Scream, and it launched her into the public spotlight. And even after that moment, one that would have sent most people back to dry land forever, Valerie remained unwavering in her belief that sharks weren't the villains. In her own words, "I don't actually believe sharks attack humans. We put ourselves into their environment and they don't even realize that we're there. We're just prey. They think we're an animal, perhaps like a sea lion or another creature that's on the surface. I think sharks are just living, feeding, and going about their business. Now that there are more people in the oceans, surfers, divers, and so on, we're crowding their space. It's not like zoos. We can't corral the ocean. You know, the ocean is the ocean. The sharks are sharks. The animals are there. The quote, equal parts poetic and matter-of-fact, encapsulated who Valerie was. She didn't fear the wild. She respected it. She knew its danger and its grace. In the mid-2000s, tired of the chaos of New York, Valerie relocated to the Galapagos Islands, a place that had long captivated her. The same place that once inspired Darwin's theories of evolution. Valerie saw it as a kind of sacred ground. She ran a culinary school for local children, volunteered at schools to teach kids about marine conservation, and gave them real, sustainable alternatives to the fishing and shark finning industries. She studied cooking under celebrity chef Mario Batali and brought that creativity and warmth to her island life. Valerie was someone who lived between extremes. There was rarely a middle ground. She could be the happiest person in the room, radiating joy, cracking jokes, filling every space with energy. When she smiled, it felt like life was extraordinary and anything was possible. If you were her friend, you'd never know someone more loyal, more enthusiastic, more willing to go to the ends of the earth with you or for you. But she also struggled deeply. Valerie lived with bipolar disorder, and the highs and lows she endured were legendary. Her temper could flare, her trust was sometimes misplaced, and the expectations she placed on herself and others were impossibly high. She was fearless, reckless, brilliant, heartbreaking. She once ran with the bulls in Spain. On African safaris, she'd be the first to leap from the vehicle and chase after lions just for a better shot. She'd stick her hand into the mouths of sharks without hesitation. She laughed louder than anyone else, lived faster than everyone around her, and when she was in a room, she was the room. So in June of 2014, when news broke that Valerie had been found dead in the Galapagos Islands, killed by a single gunshot wound to the temple, people were shocked. Valerie's life was extraordinary, but it's the final chapter that leaves us with the most questions. Her death in the Galapagos was ruled a suicide, but as the details began to surface, so did the doubts. The scene, the evidence, the timing, none of it felt right. Was it suicide, or was it something far more sinister? Valerie de la Valdene's story isn't just about adventure. It's about duality. It's about the glittering surface of privilege and the dark undercurrents of mental health. It's about a woman who dove into the unknown again and again until one day she didn't surface. So let's rewind. Let's walk through the timeline of Valerie de la Valdene's final days and uncover the facts that might reveal what really happened. When Valerie de la Valdene moved to the Galapagos Islands, she thought she had finally found peace. The fierce ocean conservationist, Shark Week featured diver, and globe-trotting heiress traded the chaos of New York for the untouched beauty of the Pacific. She rented a 3-story home in the buzzing port town of Puerto Ayora on Santa Cruz Island, the place where wildlife roams freely and the days move slowly under the sun. She had even married a local man nearly 30 years her senior. Her family said it was a marriage of convenience, one that allowed her to travel to remote marine sanctuaries without drawing the attention of government officials. Valerie wasn't interested in boundaries. She wanted access, freedom, and she'd do what she needed to preserve that. But whatever peace she found in the Galapagos didn't last. Because on July 5th, 2014, local police discovered her lifeless body inside that rented house. Valerie was 48 years old. She was lying on her back, her eyes turned to the ceiling as if frozen in mid-thought. Next to her was a cell phone, a small revolver, and a single .22 caliber bullet wound to her left temple. It looked like suicide, at least that's what the authorities said. The chief investigator, Eduardo Sanchez, was quick to shut down any suspicion of foul play, telling the Miami Herald, "I was there at the scene. There was no evidence of a robbery. Nothing was missing. What I did see was a lot of alcohol, a lot of bottles. But that's not what the scene said. Not to those who knew Valerie, and not to the private investigators hired by her grieving family. Because if you dig just below the surface, the cracks start to show. The police report, for one, contradicts Sanchez's public statement. Valerie's safe was open, and aside from a few stray electronics, it was empty. There was also a broken string of pearls on the floor beside her body, something her family believes signals a struggle. And then there's the gunshot wound, the most damning piece of evidence. Valerie was shot in the left temple. She was left-handed, but a paraffin test revealed no gunpowder residue on her left hand. Her right hand, the non-dominant one, had trace amounts of gunpowder. To her father and brother, that detail was everything. It suggests that not only did she not pull the trigger, but that she may have tried to push the gun away. Her father told reporters that Valerie would have had to be a contortionist to shoot herself that way, reaching over her own head, pulling the trigger with her non-dominant hand without leaving a trace of residue. It doesn't add up. The crime scene photos show her lying neatly on her back, her arms by her sides. Not slumped, not collapsed, just still, almost serene, too serene. But the mystery only deepens. In the weeks before her death, Valerie had told friends that she was being threatened. There were whispers that she had discovered something big. Information possibly linking local officials to drug trafficking operations on the island. Not only that, she'd been robbed more than once, raped and physically assaulted, and filed charges against the men. As word of her death spread across the international diving and conservation communities, her ex-husband, fellow underwater photographer Douglas Seifert, shared this update with the Shark Research Institute. Despite the initial online newspaper report from Galapagos Online calling Valerie's death a suicide, the initial investigative report has finally, after 3 weeks, been released. It quite clearly indicates Valerie was murdered after 11 p.m. on July 4th in her rented house in Santa Cruz. The investigation continues, and in time, it is likely the murderer will be discovered. It is a shocking, horrific tragedy, but there is no question that she was the victim of a violent crime. With mounting pressure from her family, friends, and fellow conservationists, the Galapagos Judicial Council announced, more than a year later on November 24, 2015, that it would reinvestigate the case. Valerie's father even offered a $10,000 reward for information that could lead to an arrest. Her body was exhumed, a second autopsy was ordered, and with it, astonishing details emerged. There were no powder burns on Valerie's left temple. The bullet had entered from a high angle traveling downward, consistent with someone taller firing the weapon from a distance. And there was still no gunpowder residue on her dominant hand. After those details, there was only silence. The judge overseeing the case was threatened. He moved his entire family to the Ecuadorian mainland. The investigator fled the island after receiving death threats of his own. He resigned. Authorities stopped returning the family's phone calls. Emails went unanswered. When the second autopsy was finally released, it had been stripped of conclusions. No mention of murder, no mention of suicide, just two chilling words: violent death. It didn't match the original autopsy. It didn't match the facts, and it didn't offer any clarity. 6 months later, the case was quietly archived once again. Authorities claimed that they had found definitive evidence of a suicide, but that evidence has never been released publicly. Valerie's family never saw it, and the questions remain. Who would want Valerie dead? And what did she know that made her a target? And why has the truth been buried deeper than the ocean floor she once loved? So if Valerie didn't take her own life, the question becomes, who did? And more importantly, why? Valerie de la Valdene may have looked like a woman living her dream. A luxury home on a tropical island, surrounded by turtles, reef sharks, and sun. But underneath that perfect picture was a growing shadow. Valerie had enemies, real ones. In the months leading up to her death, Valerie had been repeatedly robbed. Her house was broken into, belongings stolen. But more than that, she had been assaulted and raped. She filed official charges against 2 men and didn't stay silent when she saw one of them roaming freely in her neighborhood. She went straight to the authorities. And that's where things started to shift from disturbing to chilling. On the very day she died, July 4th, 2014, Valerie was supposed to re-testify in court. It was her chance to help keep at least one of her attackers behind bars. But the deposition was suddenly and mysteriously canceled at the last minute. 2 days earlier, Valerie told her friend Eduardo Donoso that she was being threatened. She had already gone to the police. She was scared, but she wasn't just afraid for herself. She may have been carrying explosive information. Locals on the island whispered that Valerie had stumbled across something far more dangerous than street-level predators, something organized, embedded, and powerful. They say she took a photo, an image of an island official deeply connected to the local cartel snorting cocaine. Possibly under the influence herself, Valerie confronted him, told him she'd post the photo if he didn't stop selling drugs to children, the kids she had been teaching to cook. That official? Allegedly, none other than Rafael Correa, the former president of Ecuador. According to those same rumors, that photo wasn't the only evidence she had. It said Valerie had recordings, graphic ones, of the president in compromising sexual situations. One account even claims he was caught on camera in the middle of a drug-fueled party in a disturbing act with an 18-year-old boy. 2 days before she was killed, Valerie emailed her mother. The message was strange, disjointed. It said, "I did something very stupid. Someone saved me. I'm scared for my life, and I'm coming home." She never made it home. Her brother said Valerie's fearlessness beneath the waves didn't serve her well on land. He said when she stopped getting in the water, she had to keep some kind of danger around her at all times. Valerie just had to have adrenaline. She had to have some kind of excitement around her. Her ex-husband agreed. He described her as generous, sometimes recklessly so. She was always giving people her time and money, whether they deserved it or not. She was a collector of strays, stray animals, stray people. But there's a fine line between living fearlessly and attracting danger. Her friends on the island didn't believe she was spiraling. Pedro Alverde, one of her closest companions, admitted she liked to party, sure. But he said there was no sign she was depressed. She had plans, concrete plans, to leave the island, travel to Guayaquil, and then visit her parents near Tallahassee. Valerie even told friends she'd been laying off alcohol in the days leading up to her deposition. She was focused, determined, and tense, ready to leave the Galapagos behind. According to Pedro, she sent him an email just after 5 p.m. on the night of July 4th. It read, "Where are you? I keep calling and nothing. I want to go to Guayaquil and Canoa. Call me, please." To him, it wasn't the voice of a woman giving up. It was a cry for help, a woman trying to get out. But she never got that chance. Her friends believed the local police were quick to label her death a suicide because the alternative was too damaging, too messy. The Galapagos aren't just a national treasure. They're a global tourism engine. In 2013 alone, over 204,000 people visited the islands. Admitting that a violent murder occurred there, possibly connected to a former president and a local cartel, could shake the entire foundation of Ecuador's tourism industry. So instead, they pointed to the bottles, the party rumors, the gossip, and they closed the case. They called her a troubled woman, said she'd been reckless. But they ignored the motive, the threats, the crimes committed against her, the fear she expressed just days before her death. They ignored Valerie. Now, the only people left fighting for justice are the ones who loved her most, her friends, her ex-husband, and for years, her parents. Sadly, her mother passed away in 2020 after a long battle with Alzheimer's. And in 2023, her father joined his wife of 55 years, neither of them ever knowing who killed their daughter. the truth may be buried beneath layers of corruption, silence, and fear. But Valerie de la Valdene deserves to be remembered, not for the mystery of her death, but for the passion and fearlessness with which she lived. When you picture the Galapagos Islands, your mind probably drifts to turquoise waters, prehistoric iguanas sunning on volcanic rocks, and rare species found nowhere else on Earth. And you wouldn't be wrong. But paradise, as we've learned, isn't always perfect. Santa Cruz Island is home to Puerto Ayora, the island's largest town and main tourist hub. It's a place where wildlife roams freely, where the sunsets seem painted by a divine hand, and where travelers come from every corner of the world for adventure, research, or a moment of escape. But as with any destination, especially one so remote, there's a flip side. And if we've learned anything from Valerie's story, it's that even a place as stunning as Santa Cruz can hold shadows. So let's talk about staying safe on your Galapagos adventure, especially if you're headed to Santa Cruz. The laid-back island vibe is part of what draws so many here. Locals are friendly, the beaches are serene, and there's a sense of timelessness that can make you forget the outside world entirely. But that sense of freedom, especially when combined with alcohol, late nights, and new acquaintances, can be dangerous. Valerie loved this place. She was enchanted by the biodiversity and the beauty. But in her final weeks, she also knew the risks. She spoke to friends about being threatened, robbed, and even assaulted. There are reports that she filed police complaints, that she was being followed, that she feared for her life after rubbing shoulders with the wrong people. And that's something travelers don't often read about in glossy brochures. So here are some ground rules for keeping yourself safe on the island. Know your surroundings. Santa Cruz may be small, but Puerto Ayora has its fair share of back alleys and poorly lit streets. Walk with friends at night and avoid isolated paths, especially near the port. Watch your drinks. Partying with locals can seem like a dream travel story, but drugs are present on the island, and there are whispers of cartel ties even in paradise. Never leave your drink unattended, don't accept anything from someone you don't know and trust, and simply don't do drugs. Choose your company wisely. Valerie was warm, open, and endlessly generous. She gave time, money, and trust to people who didn't always deserve it. Learn from her. Just because someone seems friendly doesn't mean they're safe. Always trust your gut. If a crime happens, report it, but know the system can be flawed. Valerie had reportedly filed charges against 2 men, one for rape. Her family believes her outspokenness may have made her a target. Unfortunately, justice in the Galapagos, especially when tourism is at stake, can be complicated. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, contact your embassy as well as local police, and always document everything. Robberies are not rampant, but they do happen, especially to foreigners perceived as wealthy. Valerie's safe was found nearly empty when she died. Her home was in disarray. Some said it looked like a party, others saw signs of a break-in. Either way, something happened that night. When you visit, keep valuables minimal. Leave flashy jewelry and expensive gear in a hotel safe or locked secure storage. Carry copies of your passport and only as much cash as you need. Lock all the doors and windows, even in your rental or hostel, especially if you're staying outside of major hotels. Travel insurance isn't just smart, it's essential. Make sure you're covered for theft, medical emergencies, and unexpected changes. Now, let's talk about the wild. Valerie was an award-winning underwater photographer. She swam with hammerheads, sea lions, and even once found herself alone, surrounded by sharks near Darwin Island. She kept filming, broke a rib, she survived. Barely. You can dive the same waters Valerie did, but it's not without risk. If you're planning a marine adventure, here are a few safety tips. Always dive with licensed operators. Check reviews, verify credentials, and make sure there's emergency equipment on board. Respect the ocean. The Galapagos currents are no joke. They're powerful, unpredictable, and have claimed many lives. Never snorkel or dive without a guide, unless you're an expert swimmer and fully briefed on the area. Now, sharks aren't your enemy, but they demand respect. Like Valerie said, I don't actually believe sharks attack humans. The ocean is the ocean. The sharks are the sharks. The animals are there. That reverence is key. Avoid sudden movements, never corner a shark, and remember, you're in their world. Watch for jellyfish and sharp coral. Marine injuries can ruin a trip fast. Bring a wetsuit, stay alert, and don't touch what you don't recognize. Valerie didn't just dive, she gave back. She ran a culinary school for local kids, offering them an alternative to fishing and finning. If you're moved by her story, consider volunteering with a local organization or donating to Galapagos conservation efforts. Santa Cruz is breathtaking. The sunsets, the sea lions, the giant tortoises, the people will all leave a mark on you. But as Valerie's story shows us, beauty and danger sometimes share the same space. So go, dive the deep, watch the stars from a silent beach. But don't forget to stay alert, stay smart, and trust your instincts. You can fall in love with a place and still protect yourself in it, because paradise doesn't protect you. Valerie de la Valdene was a woman drawn to the wild edges of the world. A fearless diver, a talented filmmaker, a daughter, sister, friend. She sought out the most remote corners of the ocean, not for fame, not for fortune, but for the chance to capture beauty in its rawest form. And she did it with a quiet, relentless courage. In 2007, she told Larry King in an interview, "Seeing a school of 10,000 hammerhead sharks above you is like seeing stars on a beautiful night. It's beyond imagination, beyond beauty, beyond sensuality, beyond anything you can imagine." That's how her family imagines her now, not in that ransacked room in Porto Ayora, but beneath the waves she loved so much. Now our Valerie sleeps with the hammerhead sharks, the manta ray, the sea lions, the whale sharks, and the fish in the waters of her beloved Galapagos. But she shouldn't be just a memory. Not when the people responsible for her death may still be walking free. Not when justice has been ignored and the truth buried under politics, silence, and fear. If you're listening to this and you know something, if you were on the island, if you heard a rumor, if you saw something you were too afraid to share, if you were told to stay quiet, or if your conscience has grown louder over the years, please come forward. Her family offered a reward. They pleaded with authorities. They pushed for an investigation twice. And still, no answers. But it's not too late. Valerie's story doesn't have to end in silence. You can contact authorities and tell them what you know. Because Valerie was more than just a mystery. She was a woman who lived boldly, fought for justice, even when it was dangerous, and paid the ultimate price. She deserves answers, and the world deserves the truth. And finally, remember to leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars if you like the show, or hell, even if you don't. But either way, feel free to let me know what you think. Please follow The Last Trip on Instagram at The Last Trip Crime Pod, and subscribe on Patreon to support the show. You'll get extra research, videos, photos, and updates, and even learn more about my personal travels. That's patreon.com/thelasttrippodcast. I'm Jamie Beebe, bringing you your last trip and signing off until the next one. Thanks for listening.